Hey guys, in this video, we're going to be building a to-do list application with Firebase version 9 and React version 18. And at the end of this video, we're going to deploy it. So this is the live URL. You can preview this in the description down below. So this is where at the moment we have one to do. You can see that in the database over here. So I could add another to do like buy milk. Okay, subscribe. So you can see that those to-dos are being added up in the database over here. Okay. And if we delete one here, it's going to automatically remove. So I can remove, and I could refresh the page and it's going to show empty, then it's going to load in those to-dos. So this is what we're going to be building in this tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to learn all about Firebase, Firestore, and React 18 building a to-do list application. Okay, so quickly, before we get into building the database with React and stuff, I just want to just give an overview of what Firebase is and how we are going to be using it. If you know what Firebase is, I strongly recommend you still watch this because I'm going to explain how we are going to use it exactly. So it's just going to be real quick, like 2 minutes. So first of all, what is Firebase? It's a NoSQL database by Google, and it allows us to run so many functions on the front end of our application. So the NoSQL here is kind of the word that you might not know. It means that it stores data in forms of documents and collections instead of tables and rows traditionally. So how does a document and how does a collection look like? Because we're going to be using these terms a lot when we're coding. So it was just a prerequisite that you know this. Okay, data is stored in forms of documents and collections. Okay, so this is how a diagram, this is just an overview diagram of what it is. We have a collection of to-dos and we have a document here for an example. Let's call it ID1, and we could have, it's supposed to be ID2. We can have, of course, obviously, IDs are unique. So inside here, we have a JavaScript object. We have what the to-do is supposed to do, buy milk, and we have the ID. And I just put a placeholder here. Actually, this is supposed to be the document ID. So this is how it's going to look like. We have a collection, we have the document, and the actual data that we need is a JavaScript object is inside the document. So this is just how an overview of this is a simple data model of our application. So going forward, now you are now ready to build a to-do list with React and Firebase. Okay, so what I'm going to have you to do, I'm going to have you to create a new React app. So you can use that using the default create React app, or you could use Vite, which I strongly recommend to just run the command and install it with Vite. So I already have, and by the way, you should subscribe to the channel. I already have a React app here, and I'm just going to run this. Then we're going to install Firebase and the rest. So npm run dev. Okay, so that has started. Okay, so you see our React app. And by the way, I have a bunch of CSS styles here, just some basic CSS styles here. I'm going to leave this in the description down below so you guys can get that. And think I'm going to leave this in the description down below. So CSS is not the main focus of this video. So what I'm going to do is that we're going to install Firebase because we need Firebase to connect to the Firebase SDK and make changes. So I'm going to open up a new command prompt, npm I Firebase. And while we're installing Firebase, we want to come here to our Firebase or google.com. Okay, so if this is your first time using Firebase, what you have to do is that you have to make an account. And already, if you have a Google account, you already have an account. Just like you just have to just make a project, and that is super dead simple. I've covered in many videos. You can go and check my video on covered in many videos. So, and making a project is not hard. I might even give you some directions in this video. So you can switch to the account that you want. I'm good with this account, so I'm just give the second, let the page load. So I'm going to full screen this. Click on go to console. Okay, so that's going to come to our Firebase console, and in the meantime, Firebase is installing. So Firebase is a very big library, so just be patient if you don't get it to install in the first try. So as I said here, if you have never used Firebase here, you will not see all this. What you have to do is create a new project by just clicking the plus icon, starting with a name for your project, like some random name. Then you click on continue. Then you can just click on continue. Then like so you have a new project. But I'm not going to make a new project. I already have my project that I want to use. So I can just come here. And by the way, if you have also created a new project, you're going to click on add app. Click on add web. So if you've created a new project, so I can just call this React Firebase. So you can click on register app. You can set up Firebase hosting, but we're not going to be using Firebase hosting to host our website. And so it tells us to install Firebase. We are already doing this. What we just have to just do is just copy this. Then click on go to console. Okay, look, I see this is almost finished installing. So that stuff that we copied earlier, what we're going to do, we're going to come here, click on the source folder, click on a new file, and write firebase.js. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to full screen this again. Okay, I don't know what's happening in the terminal right now, but let's just leave that to be installing. So we're going to full screen this, move this, and we're going to change this to get firestore. So this is how you port the services you want to use. In this case, we are only using the Firebase, and the Firebase is called firestore. And we'll copy this instead of get analytics, paste that here. I'll call this DB. So what we want to do is export app and DB. Okay, so let's check the terminal and see how Firebase is doing. Okay, that's pretty chaotic. And so we can click on our React Fire application. So now, click on Firebase. Okay, sorry. And by the way, I'm going to delete the collection, so you should not see anything. And by the way, okay, we're going to delete that. Yeah, so we start with an empty collection. And by the way, if yours didn't come out like this, you just ask you a bunch of questions, and it's going to ask you if you want to start in test mode. Click start in test mode. And just to be sure, just come to the rules section so that you won't have any errors. Come to the rules section, and this is what it will be. If false, changes to if true. Very important, or you will not be able to read anything from the database at all. Okay, so let's come back here. Okay, so I have successfully installed Firebase. Okay, so what we want to do is I want to put this on the side. Come here. Come here, sorry. Okay. Okay, so notice at the corner bottom of the file, I am importing use state and from React. So what do we want to do? Okay, what we want to do is I want to have a form. Okay, this form is going to go to nowhere. Inside here, we just want to have an input Then inside here, we want to have a button that says submit. And by the way, we're going to give this a type of submit. Okay, I said due to the CSS, it started a little bit good. Okay, so what we want to do is that we want to be able to add things to Firebase. Let's start with that. That's like the basic functionality. So first of all, we'll have an on submit here. So on submit, handle submit. Okay, I'm going to say const handle submit is going to be equal to, we have the event object automatically passed. I'm going to say e dot prevent default. So after we prevent the default action from the form submitting, we want to import Firebase, whatever we import DB and app from, actually we just want to just import DB, we won't need app anymore, from /Firebase. Okay. So first of all, we want to create an object. I want to track the value of this input as well. So we're going to have a piece of state to track the value of the input. So const input set input is going to be equal to use state of just empty. Then we want to say on change, we want to set input e dot target the value. But wait a minute, we have to take passing the event object into an anonymous function. Okay, so what we want to do is start by doing the easiest of them all, is to add a document. So you notice I've already made this an async function because this is going to be an async function. So I'm going to say await set doc, and I'm going to pass in the document. We're going to pass in that DB there. Then we want to set it in the to-dos collection, and a collection is a collection of documents. So you're going to see that in a minute. And we want the ID to be crypto, or we can just define this here. Const let ID be equal to crypto dot random UID. So this is going to generate an ID for us. So I'm going to pass in the ID like so. So this is the reference to the this is the reference to the document. Then we're going to pass in the actual data. The data that we want to pass in here is the to-do text. To-do text as input. And finally, we want to pass in the ID. So ID, okay, we can just leave this like this. So it's the same thing because the key and the value match. So let's test this if this works. I'm gonna save this, click on submit. It says doc is not defined. Oh, sorry, let's import this. Okay, let's try this again now. Okay, we see no errors. If we come to Firebase and we refresh the page, because it's not going to show in real time because it's a new collection. But after the collection has been created, we no longer have to refresh the page in case we add or delete things from it. And the reason why we're storing this to a variable instead of just putting it here again twice is because we want the name, the ID of the document and the ID here to match as well. So give this a second. Okay, yeah, so great. We can see our to-do that has been added right here. So we have completed the first thing, which is the most easiest one, which is adding a to-do list to the database. Nice. And you can see our ID and our ID here matches correctly. So what we want to do now is that we want to get the data when the page loads. And how do we do that? We use a special hook called the use effect hook. So we say use effect passing a function to the use effect hook. So what we want to do is that we want to get the data. So we're going to use get docs for that. And by the way, this can't be an async function. So get docs. And what we're going to pass in here is that we want to get this, right? So we're going to use collection. First of all, the first thing we pass in is the DB, and we pass in the to-dos. Difference between doc and collection. Oh, we'll see that in a minute. So we pass in get docs, and this is the path to that document. This returns a promise. We're not going to use async await because we can't use async await inside the use effect. There's ways around it, but I just want to keep this tutorial as simple as possible. So console or log, we can console or log the data if we get anything back. And by the way, we have to pass in an empty dependency array to make sure this does not run every single time. Test. Tell hooks can only be called outside the body of a functional component. This is why you may miss my version. Oh yeah, we're trying to call this inside a function. We can't call this inside a function. It has to be outside every other function. Okay, yeah, so we see this here. This is what we get back from Firebase. The difference between collection and doc is that doc, it has to be, the segments are even, while collection, the segments are odd. What do I mean? This is the same thing as saying to do /id. The same thing as saying to do /id. So how many segments? In fact, and we could refactor this to something like this. So we could just remove it. We could refactor it to something like this, and it will still work. I'm just going to demo that D, and if we add this to the Firebase, you can see that's there. So this, if you count the segments, an even number of segments, but if you count the segments here, they are odd. Okay, so we get the data to the console. So what do we want to do with the data essentially? What we want to do, okay, I'm gonna remove this button. Let's full screen this, please. So we want to set a state to this handler. So let's put the use effect below our state. I'm going to say constant. Let's just call this to do's. Set to do's is going to be equal to use state of this. So what we're going to do when we get the data, you notice that that object that we saw wasn't actually the data actually, but well, we need to cycle each all of them and call a function to get the data. So I'm going to say data.docs. So save this here, and what we're going to do, we're going to say to do's, and so what this is going to do is going to run this part of the code when there are to do's. Okay, so what we want to do here is run a map. To do's.map for each to do. So it says we're having a function, so expected. So the problem with the code is quite simple. What's happening is that in JSX you cannot run something. Everything has to be in one parent component. That's the problem with the code. So to fix this, we use something called fragments. Okay, I'm going to X this and put this here. This is when you don't want to put everything into one singular component. So we're going to say to do's and to do's.map. So what this is saying essentially, when there are to do's, run this side of the code. Because if this is false, it will never even run this code. So to do, because if we just try and do this normally, we'll get an error. Return. So we always want to return something from the map. And what we want to return is an li with to do dot data dot to do text. So let's see if this works for a minute. Oh yeah, we see that nicely. But what we see, it says each child is supposed to have a key. Okay, so keys are a way of React knowing which element to change when it will render. So we can say to do dot data dot id. Nice. One more thing, what we have to do, we want to have a span too. Span, at the same time, it's going to give us that same error again. So in this case, the span, I think it's supposed to be inside here. X. By the way, this is going to be inside a UL. Okay. Save. Okay, everything works nicely. So let's refresh the page. So we get our to-do list. We can add, but that doesn't show up immediately. It's the reason why that doesn't show up immediately is because we have to use a snapshot listener. This gets the data, but it doesn't get the data in real time. So I think we should just be able to just change this to, okay, should be able to just change this to on snapshot. So what on snapshot to do is that whenever the data change is going to rerun this code again. Data is not defined. Yeah, so this should be query snapshot.docs. Oh yeah, so we get everything now. So every single time it changes, it's going to rerun that function again. So every single time the database changes now, it's going to run that function code again. And we see that right here. So what we just have to just do now is just make sure that we can run the delete function. So what we want to do here is we want to do something like on click handle delete. And we want this to be an arrow function because we want to pass in the to do dot data dot id so that we exactly know which document to delete. Okay, so const handle delete is going to be equal to the id. Yes, so what do we want to do here? By the way, this is going to be an async function. I want to say await delete doc. Delete doc. Okay, delete doc. By the way, make sure that imports it correctly so that we don't get errors in the console. And so we want to delete a document, and I think we should use collection because it's going to have an odd number of segments, or rather we're going to use doc because it's going to have an even number of segments to do /id. Remember, if you had a sub collection, this you could keep on going with the number of segments. So what we want to just do here is a doc. Remember, passing the database usual, and we want to pass in to do's / the ID of whatever that to do was. Save. Okay. Oh, it deletes. So I think that is the end of this tutorial. Everything works perfectly. So we can add test 2, 3, delete, delete, delete. But there's one more thing I want to do. What's that? We could just make everything a little bit cleaner here because everything is just inside one component and it's not very good practice to just build an application inside one component. So let's just quietly refactor everything from the add to do function to the to everything around here. So let's just refactor it. So I'm gonna say add to do .jsx rfce. Okay, that doesn't work. So function add to do return export default add to do. So what we just want to just do, we want to cut this, okay, cut this, and put this inside here. And before it's not, it won't work yet because we are passing, we need to take in some certain props. Handle submit and set input. Those are the functions that we're using there. So we can just say add to do. That's going to automatically import that. So yes, it has correctly imported it. And we want to give it handle submit, and lastly, you want to give it set input. Save that. If we check this test, it still works. Nice. So what we just do is that we can also refactor this portion of the code. But let's refactor from here. Oh, it really doesn't matter. We'll say render, call it render to dos. Let's make that file render to dos.jsx function render to do return. Okay, we accidentally pasted it 2 times. Export default render to do. Okay, so what are we using in this component? The main thing I'm using is just handle delete. It doesn't matter the order you import them, and to dos. Save. So handle delete to dos. We're going to pass in to dos. Save. Okay, this one doesn't work. Let's refresh and let's see why. And I think I kind of know why this one doesn't work. So let's wrap it in our conditional check that says to dos and. What does it give us? It says render to do is not defined. Okay, sorry, let's import this. Okay, it works. So just to wrap up the video, before we finish the video, let's deploy the application because I said I was going to deploy it. So to deploy it, you run npm run build. And I'm going to need you to come to a site called Netlify. We're going to come to Netlify. And to use Netlify, you have to sign in. You have to sign into Netlify either with your GitHub account or your email. When you come to this URL, it is going to ask you for you to sign up, but I've already signed up. So I don't have that. I don't need to do that, but I'm going to show you the kind of like the process of it. So let's just type in Netlify, please enter. So as you see, it's going to tell me to sign up with one of the following. Actually, this is going to tell us to sign up with one of the following, or you could just sign up here. This is the same process, but I'm going to, because I already have an account, I'm going to log in with my GitHub. So let's come here. Bit is okay. It's supposed to be npm run build. Sorry, npm run build, and this is just going to take a second. Okay, Netlify is still taking time to load. Okay. Okay, so it's going to. Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to come to. It says browse and upload. So we need to let this finish first of all. So this is going to take a while, or it has already started already. Okay, so it has run that command and it has built it out. So what it's going to do is that it's going to create a production build for our application, that is so that we can deploy it. So we're going to come to the public folder, oh sorry, the dist folder, and inside the index.html file. So what it essentially do is I compiled everything to one big massive JavaScript file. Okay, so we're going to close that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this in my file explorer so that we can quickly deploy this to Netlify. So I'm going to come to Netlify, and it's going to open now in my file explorer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag every single thing in the dist folder. Oh sorry, I'm going to drag every single thing in the dist folder. Okay, so we're going to click on that, and just wait for a minute. Now it has already started deploying, and in a few seconds it should be deployed. And yes, the site has been deployed, so congratulations. Let's click on it and see if it works. And we get the app, and it works. You can add things to it. So thank you for watching, and that is the end of the video.